Hi YouTube. In this video I'm going to fly the A2A Cessna 172 in Flight Simulator 10. I'm using this Garmin GTN 750 add-on that is also supported by A2A. I want to try out the advanced capabilities of the real-world GTN 750 but in a simulated flight so that I can complete an LPV approach into Naples Airport in Florida. I do not have an instrument rating and have not used FXX in a long time, so my rustiness in flight control will be evident in this video. Before we get into the cockpit, here is the approach chart for Naples. The identifier is KAPF. By using the GTN 750, we can use its improved GPS features to complete a LPV approach into Naples. As you can see, with LPV, the decision height is 313 feet, whereas with the usual ILS approach it would be 461 feet. Okay, so here we are in the cockpit, and what we're going to do today is to take off from Immokalee, where we are in Florida, and as you can see, it's very flat terrain. In fact, I think the highest airfield elevation in Florida is about 47 feet, so we don't need to worry about the terrain. I need to, we're going to fly, by the way, to Naples Airport, Naples Municipal Airport, and the identifier for that is KAPF. APF standing for alternate page field, because at some stage Naples was an alternate, maybe still an alternate for Fort Myers, where there is an airport called Page Field. Just as a backup, I was going to make sure that the heading bug is set in the runway direction, but I notice that it is. I'm going to select the nav source as being GPS, because we're going to use this Garmin GTN 750 as to aid our flight. It uses GPS but augmented, I believe, with radio beacons to give a high level of accuracy, which enables an LPV approach. So let's bring up the GTN so that you can see it more easily. I'll just click this and bring it onto the screen. Click continue and continue. Initially it does a terrain awareness test, which it's doing right now.
TOS system test OK.
So the test is completed and OK. Got this message flashing, so let's click on that. Just some warnings about the fact we're using a demo mode, so clear it. First thing we want to do is to set up our flight plan. Click on flight plan. We're at Immokalee, which is KIMM. We're going to not be using ATC today, so we're not going to get vectors. So I'm selected on the chart a visual waypoint which crosses the approach into Naples. This visual waypoint is at Lake Trafford, so let's add the waypoint, and it is VPF. I can see that in fact it's auto-filled for us, the remainder of it, VPFAH, so click enter, and it's now entered into the flight plan. So that takes us to the visual reference point. We want to now set up the LPV approach into Naples, so I'm going to go back, select procedures, select approach. It's defaulted to Immokalee. Edit that to KAPF. Shows it as Naples Municipal Airport, and enter. We're going to use the runway 23 LPV approach. So we get that on the screen and we can see the missed approach routing. At this stage we just want to load the approach, we don't want to activate it. So we can see that's added into the flight plan, but the magenta shows that we're currently heading towards that visual reference point. Click back, go into maps, or map, and we can see where we are at Immokalee. Let's just zoom out and double check the flight plan routing so that all looks okay. Let's zoom back in again. So what we need to do now is to take off. So let's apply some throttle. Check temperatures and pressures are all in limits, and apply full power. At 60 knots we rotate. We're going to look at the autopilot now. Turn it on. Select altitude and arm. Also we want to select our climb rate at 700 feet per minute, and we'll select nav to ensure that we're going on the route as per the GTN. Let's go back to the cockpit. So we can see we're climbing at 700 feet per minute. And Lake Trafford is ahead of us. Let's pop this GTN 750 out again, just move it up the screen. Reducing the volume up slightly. The beeping indicates that we have 1,000 feet to go to our selected altitude. The zooming in and out on the 750 is automatic, I'm not actually touching anything. So we've got message flashing again, let's just click on that. So it's telling us to set the course on the CDI. I'm going to delay doing that just for a minute because we're going to change course anyway in a moment. So in fact I'm going to go back into the flight plan, click on the approach, select the approach and activate the approach. So immediately the aircraft is responding and it's going to be turning on to the correct route to fly our LPV approach. We're coming up to the 2,100 feet altitude and the autopilot is altering the control surfaces, and I'm going to pull the throttle back, otherwise we'll overspeed. So I'm going to go back to about 2,250 RPM. Let's click back on the map. So you can see the aircraft is now turning on to the LPV approach. And we can see at the bottom of the 750 screen it says LPV. LPV stands for Localizer Performance with Vertical Guidance. So it's using the improved accuracy of the system to give us a very good approach into Naples. And normally you'd use this in IMC or instrument meteorological conditions where the visibility is poor, and by using LPV I've got quite a low decisional height of just 310 feet above the runway height. We're on course, but I need to pop back into the autopilot and click on approach, so that shows the glide slope is now armed, and then we'll go back into the cockpit. Let's have a little look out behind. As I said, Florida is extremely flat, so not much worry about terrain avoidance. Let's go back into the cockpit. Pop this back up. Go back to the menu and click on the terrain button, see what it shows us. Can zoom out on that. So if there's terrain of significance, it comes up in a coloured indication. Another way of going back to the main menu is click Home, Maps, back on that screen. The final approach fix is Teftu, which you can see here and here on the map. So this is the final approach fix for our LPV approach into Naples. I'm just going to have another little message, and it's telling us now to set the CDI, course deviation indicator, to 230 degrees. So we'll do that as a backup. I did actually fly this route into Naples a few years ago when I was a trainee pilot, and I was on my solo cross country. The last leg of the route was from an airport called Pahoki, and when I landed at Pahoki, unfortunately they had a power cut, so I couldn't refuel the aircraft. So a lot of fine detail checking went on fuel levels, and I flew via Immokalee on my way back to Naples in case I needed to land and top up fuel, but I found in fact that I had sufficient reserves, so I didn't actually make the landing. I just went straight from Pahoki to land at Naples. We're on a very long approach into Naples here for a Cessna 172. Normally you'd probably come in from a different angle. This is more for jet aircraft. At Naples, if you're doing circuits, it's still quite intensive because the circuit is quite tight, You're making radio calls and it's an extremely busy airport. So sometimes you're on the base leg getting ready for final. You're probably doing 60 or 70 knots. And at the same time there's a jet approaching the airport on this approach. I think they're doing 130 knots. So yeah, it can get entertaining. On the screen here, this area here, we can see the CDI. And this shows us the glide slope, and we are below the glide slope at the moment, which is as expected. As we get closer to the glide slope, this line is going to fall towards the centre line, and when it's horizontal it means we're on the glide slope. Hopefully when we get to that glide slope point, the autopilot will alter the control surfaces so that we start to descend. Let's have a little look out to the side of the aircraft. We're looking out right. Lots of lakes. And out to the left. A lot of swampland around Florida, so we had a forced landing. Go for a golf course like that. Not a good idea to land in the swamps, as they tend to be alligator ridden. We can see the PAPI indicators at Naples now. Obviously they're red because we're below the glide path. Naples is on the east coast of Florida, and it's a very popular tourist destination with lovely sandy beaches. You can see from the CDI that we're approaching the point where we're going to capture the glide slope. So we're on the glide slope and the aircraft is starting to descend, so I'm going to pull the throttle back, otherwise we'll soon be overspeeding again. In fact, shortly I'm going to reduce the throttle even more because I want to... that beeping shows us that we're 200 feet below our selected altitude. That can be a warning if you're meant to be in cruise and you go below 200 feet. It warns you that you're doing that. I'm reducing the throttle because I need to apply flaps, which I have to do manually. So I need to get the airspeed into the lower white arc on the airspeed indicator before I can apply flaps. So we'll drop right back to about 1200 RPM. The airspeed is falling. Just about in the white arc, first level of flaps. The nose comes up, which is normal. And I'm going to apply some more throttle because we don't want the airspeed to drop too much. Let's bring in the second leg full of flaps. And the final level of flaps. So So we've now got 3 levels of flap. So we're on the glide slope, we've got 3 levels of flap. We're going to adjust our airspeed with the throttle to about 65 knots.
$500.
So that's 500 to the runway elevation. I'm going to disable the autopilot at 313 feet. So that's the autopilot going out now. So I've got manual control. Seems to be a bit of a crosswind, so need to bank to the right slightly. Keep the airspeed up. Slightly high. We're going to make the runway, so I'm reducing the throttle. Bit of a hard landing that. So we'll look for a taxiway to exit from. So our safe taxiway chart is showing, and we'll come off at this taxiway Alpha 2. We need to ensure that we properly exited the runway before we stop and clean up the aircraft. So let's look outside the aircraft and we'll clean up these flaps. We've let the tower know that we've vacated the runway, and we can see our safe taxi chart. So we'll cool ground now and get permission to taxi back to the ramp. So hope you found that LPV approach into Naples useful, and I'll cut the video now. Thanks for watching.